I like due diligence day because I get to discover and I get to find cool things and we always find surprises. But I also don't like it because it always feels like such a bad day.
Hello and welcome to Pillars of Wealth Creation, where we talk about creating financial success with a special focus on business and real estate. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Now, let's get to it.
Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer, and excited to have another solo podcast here. So, hope you're doing well. You have a property under contract and you're excited for it, which you should be, right? You put it under contract. Hopefully, you're actually excited and you want to get it. You're probably maybe a little bit nervous too. You know, you want to make sure it's the right property, all that kind of stuff. But hopefully, you've done all your digging and feel like this deal works, right? The underwriting works, the location's good, we can get good financing, we've got a good business plan, all that kind of stuff. And so what's next? Well, the next big step, well, I guess it kind of depends what you're doing. There's going to be several next steps, right? So you got to raise money for the property potentially. If you don't have that, you got to secure the financing, that type of stuff. You got to make sure you have the property management company if you're not going to manage it yourself. You got to come up with a really well thought out business plan, which hopefully you've pretty much got that all down. You got to procure quotes from contractors. But I think the biggest next step is to actually do the due diligence, make sure this deal is really what you think it is, because we can only see so much, right? When we look at a property for the first time, and decide we're going to make an offer, we're looking at the financials, certainly the T12 and whatever the rent roll and whatever they're able to provide you. But it's typically pretty limited. Like a lot of times, I mean, quite frankly, sometimes it's like almost nothing, right? But a lot of times it's not the full financial package and all that kind of stuff. And then physically, like, yeah, you went and looked at the property maybe, and hopefully quite frankly, sometimes we will put properties. I don't know if we've ever put it under contract, but at least LOI, letter of intent, without looking. But you're going to want to get in there and actually physically look at the property, right? You want to get into every single unit. You want to look at everything outside, all that kind of stuff. So let's talk due diligence. I mean, look, when we have a property that, well, first of all, when we're actually making our initial letter of intent, we include a due diligence checklist, and so those, that's there's a lot there in our due diligence checklist. It's not just like super, basic. I mean, we're talking several pages of due diligence that we're looking for, and so some of those things I think ours is like it's either 3 or 4 pages, but some of those things are the financials, which again, hopefully we've seen a lot of that stuff, but we want the rent roll. And by the way, we want to make sure we're receiving the rent roll updated every single month so that when we close, we understand that that's a true rent roll. It's I've caught fraud twice now. Um, Purchasing properties. One property I ended up actually purchasing, they committed fraud. They were just cooking the books, and I caught it, and we ended up working out an agreement, um, and still going through with the deal. The other time, it's actually a very reputable, well-known group. And I'm not going to say it here because plenty of people would know it, but they're a very reputable group that owns properties in the southeast, and um, we put one of their properties under contract and ended up figuring out they fraudulated the books. And when we approached the owner just basically went completely silent and didn't have a didn't have an explanation for anything. Um, so it happens, right? It happens, and this is a reputable. I mean, they own tens, at least 10,000 units, probably. They own a lot of properties, so it's not like this is a fly by night, mom and pa group. This is a, a group that most people would say is a reputable group that raise a lot of money from people, and they've got a big presence. So it happens. People get desperate and they do weird things. And, this guy, for whatever reason, well, I know the reason. I mean, the reason was because his property was a disaster and he was trying to make it look better than what it was. So we want to make sure that we're getting everything super updated and as detailed as we can because it's easy to cook the books if you have one set. It's easy to move some numbers if you just show, call it December's financials, and then we don't have to update that. But if we have to update it, we got December's, we got January's, we got February's, we got March, and we can look at all those months, and then we can look at the rent rolls, and we can look at the actual copy of we want to actually see the accounts receivable and delinquency reports. We want to see the employee payment information, the operating budgets, all that kind of stuff, like the tenant payment history and an actual log of that last 6 months. Like once you get all that stuff, it not that you can't fraudulate, though certainly you can, but that's how we've caught it in the past is that things didn't match up. It's like, hey, wait a second, this doesn't match with this and that doesn't match with that, and so what did you change here? Well, yeah, it's because they actually physically changed one thing but didn't change it throughout the entire process, and they might change it in a couple spots but they didn't change everything. So if you're actually getting the utility logs, you can see, oh, wait a second, the actual utility log shows that this was the charge, but for some reason on their financials, they show it differently, right? So things like that. Oh, you actually made tenant deposits of $171,000. That was the actual made deposits, but you're showing on your financials that you had $182,000 worth of tenant deposits. Where did that $11,000 go and why? And so those are really important. The other thing is, look, we look a lot at the maintenance, and that's the physical due diligence is, of course, you're looking a lot at maintenance and what's going on in the building, but physical due diligence is the financials as well. It's several other things that I'll mention here, but we look at the maintenance, like what has been their history of CapEx. If you're a good owner, hopefully you built out a schedule of when the roofs have been replaced, when the siding was done, when the windows were replaced, when the parking lot was last replaced, all that kind of stuff. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to be buying from a good owner. So maybe you're buying from an owner that doesn't keep that kind of stuff, and so you're going to have to kind of try to figure some of that stuff out. But that's we want those reports if they have them. Every owner's a little bit different. I wish everyone was good, but again, next thing we want the maintenance logs. Yeah, some owners have it, some owners don't, but we want details on routine and emergency repairs and what's going on. That way we can really understand what the problems with the property are. If we see a lot of maintenance logs on the electrical system, for instance, we know that we're going to likely either have to replace the electrical system or maybe do some major repairs, or maybe it's just going to be an ongoing issue. Same thing with the plumbing system and so on. So we know that, hey, yeah, this has been an issue. Okay, it's going to probably continue to be an issue for us unless they have that big capex and they can show maybe the HVAC was an issue and you saw a ton of maintenance logs, and all of a sudden you're looking and go, oh, they replaced 74 HVAC units over the last 3 years. Yeah, that's why there was issues, and there's no longer those issues. So we can kind of extrapolate that, right? And we want what kind of permits have been um, pulled and sitemap, and we want all that kind of stuff. And that helps us build out our CapEx budget, which I'll dive into in a second. The other thing, too, is we want insurance records. That's another category that we're really looking for. So all that kind of stuff, insurance and tax bills. We want to know what their marketing plans have been. Um, and what kind of contracts they might have. We're also looking at tax and sorry, title and legal documents. So we want the Alta survey, we want the all the title documents that we can get, the CO, certificate of occupancy, all that kind of stuff. Any litigation that has happened to the property, and maybe any pending litigation. Hopefully nothing's pending, but if it is, we need to know what's going on there. And any structural reports too that they might have, environmental plans, property condition assessments, all that kind of stuff. And then what are the outstanding contracts, loan contracts, laundry contracts, maybe cable internet type contracts, all that kind of stuff. All right, so those are the documents we need. The next thing we need to do is actually physically looking at the building. And one of the things I think is really interesting when people buy these assets, we're talking like 100, 200 unit apartment building, or even a 10 unit apartment building for that matter. Uh, some people don't even go into them and really look that much. I remember about my first, about a 22 unit building. It was one of my earlier out of state purchases that I made. I think it was my maybe it wasn't my first one, but one of the earlier ones. And I show up, and we're walking units, and the owner's with, and we ended up walking um, all the units, 100% of the units. And he kept on saying, "Oh, do you want to see more?" I'm like, "Yeah, I want to see them all." And we walked into some units, and he's like, "I've never been in this unit before. Man, I've never seen this unit before." This guy's had owned it for like 7 years, 8 years. He had his chance to do due diligence. He never walked into some of these units. He didn't even know the condition that they're in. So you got to get into every single unit. I think that's so important. And we a perfect story. Okay, so we bought 124 unit apartment building. We walked almost every single unit, but we couldn't get into a unit. And I can't remember the excuse. It was, don't have keys for it, whatever. The tenant wouldn't respond. We don't have keys for it. Whatever it was, we never got into that unit. And so we just assumed, because this has happened to us before, we just assumed this is the worst unit on the property, and we're going to budget a little bit extra for that unit. Well, come to find out, after we closed, and I can't remember how much later it was, maybe 6 months, 12 months later, this person that was in that unit, we ended up doing like a wellness safety check on it, I think it was, because I hadn't heard from the guy. Anyways, go in there, and it's just disgusting. I mean, this guy had been living there. He hadn't left. This is in 2000, probably 2023, 2022, 2023, when I think it was 2023 by the time we went into this unit. And this guy hadn't left his apartment unit. He had said he hadn't left his apartment unit since Trump left office. Okay, so he'd been there in that unit since 2020. He hadn't left it since 2020, the beginning of 2020. That is crazy. And he had like stacks and stacks of ramen noodles. So that's what he's been eating the whole time. This guy had maintenance issues. So his toilet stopped working. And he didn't want to call the maintenance people because he was, I don't know, embarrassed by it. And so then he started going to the bathroom in his unit in other places. It was a complete nasty, I mean, full, like you wanted to light a match to it. It was that bad. But that happens. Like that's maybe a little extreme, right? That doesn't happen every time. Hopefully not. But stuff like that does happen. And if you're not going to go into every unit, you're going to find out you're going to have more problems than what you ever expected. Because guess what? Look, if and I might do it myself. Like, look, if you're a property owner and somebody says, yeah, I want to see about 25% of the units, or 50% of the units, or 75% of the units, or whatever, what are you going to do? You're going to pick the best units to show them. Are you going to show them the worst of the worst? No. Are you going to show them the best of the best? Yes. That's what you're going to show them. So even if you say I want you to randomly pick or whatever it is, they're going to get you into the best units. So go see them all. I think that's so important. You walk every single unit and you walk into every single room within those units and you make a big deal of it. And you want to make sure you make a really big deal to the broker that's representing the seller and to the seller that, hey, we have to see every unit. And if we don't get into every unit, we're going to need an extension on the due diligence, and it's potentially going to lead to a pretty sizable price reduction because we're going to have to assume the absolute worst of that unit. And that way, if you don't get into those units, you've already told them that, and you say, look, you didn't get me into these 3 units. Our unit renovation budget for these for the normal units is whatever, it's $18,000, but we're going to assume that these units are a complete disaster. So we're going to assume that these are $40,000 renovations, and we're going to need that to come right off the purchase price. You're going to need to give us a credit for that or whatever it might be. So show them that, give that urgency so you can get all those units, and then do it. um, One of the, a couple things that I think is easy to miss on due diligence and inspections is uh, really looking at all of the systems, mechanical systems. And so there's, and structurally too, I think is super important and oftentimes missed. So the mechanical systems that we're really looking at and we want to make sure is in really good condition, or at least the condition that we expect, right? The plumbing system is number one, and it's so easy, and this is the one that fools, I think, more people than anything else, and gets people into trouble more than anything else, and quite frankly has gotten myself into trouble more than anything else, is that the plumbing system is these plumbing systems only have a certain life expectancy to them. So when we look at plumbing, there are a few different types of plumbing that you're going to find in buildings, and one of them is going to be galvanized steel, galvanized, and then the other and cast iron. And typically, if it's got galvanized, it's got cast iron. Not always, but that was plumbing that was very common in the 1970s and before, especially early 1970s and before. That plumbing is obsolete. It's outdated. It is going to have problems. I don't care if you can't see it because they took where it comes out of the wall, they put copper or PVC onto it. If it's galvanized and cast, you will have problems. You're going to have leaks. You're going to have lines that are going to rust through. You're going to have clogs, all kinds of problems. It's just going to be issue after issue after issue. So, what's the solution? You either need to replace all of it, which is really expensive, or you need a budget for that. So get a licensed plumber in there during your due diligence to walk through and give you an idea of what the monthly repairs are. If you've got a good seller, they've had a monthly log and they've been able to show what that maintenance has been, I would multiply it by like 25%, right? I would make sure it's, or 125%. I would make sure it's quite a bit bigger, but you want to understand what those costs are going to be. If you're buying a 1970s or older building, you need to plan on big plumbing repairs. It's just how it is. And don't be fooled and thinking, well, we're only going to hold it for 3 to 5 years. We'll be fine. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. Like, you may be fine, but you're playing Russian roulette. Eventually, somebody's going to get the bullet, right? And you're going to have a big amount of expenses. So if you don't plan for that, you're really in for, man, potential major headaches. Um, Beyond the plumbing system, of course, we have the roof systems. You want to do core samples. If it's a flat roof, you want to make sure that you understand the age of the roof and what's going on there. I closed on a building, and I had a roofing company go up there that was actually hired by the property manager. That was the current property manager on the property. Big mistake. Like, find your own people. um, the roofer went up there and said everything was great. The roofs have not everything was great. They were partially honest, but roofs have 5 to 10 years worth of life expectancy on it. Literally the day after closing, there's water coming into the building. They had been hiding it, patching it, so yeah. I mean, get your own professional to look at. If I would have done core samples on those roofs and truly had my own professional look at them, they would have said, "Hey man, look, you're gonna have to replace all these roofs like right now, day one." Now, luckily, since the person that looked at it said 5 to 10 years, and I was planning on holding it for about five, I said, "Hey, we're going to budget 100% for these roofs. I think we're going to have to do them before I sell the building." And so luckily I did budget for that, so it was just fine. But I wasn't expecting leaks to start on day one and then having to do ceiling damage repair too. So uh, the next one is electrical systems. Of course, you want to pay close attention to that. What's going on? Do we have knob and tube? What do we have? If you have knob and tube, super old wiring system, you're going to have problems. Like you're just going to have problems. You know, what, is it wired properly? Do we have what kind of breakers do we have? There's certain breakers that are going to be really expensive. So there's um, Stablock, Federal Pacific breakers. There's, of course, the old, oh, why am I blanking on the name? Not breakers, but fuse panels. Those all have to get replaced, right? Or going to be super expensive for insurance. So you want to understand what you have going on there. Get an electrician in there to take a look at it. HVAC systems, same thing. Like, man, if you got a central boiler chiller, that's a big headache and a big expense. You're going to be likely doing a lot of big repairs. If you've got individual units, I don't know that it's any better because now you've got 150 or how many units you have, individual units that are going to break down at specific times. It's nice because usually they don't all break down at once. You replace 10 of them one year and 25 of them the next year and 8 of them the next year. But um, make sure you're putting a budget for those last typically about 20 years. So if they're much older than 20 years old, you're going to have to start replacing a bunch of them. Get an HVAC tech over there. Get a schedule. How much is it going to cost us to repair and to replace these units as the years go on, right? um, of course, siding, windows, doors, those are important. And then structurally, what's going on with the property too. Is there any weird ups and downs going on? Is it just cracking in the drywall and the brick, and anywhere in the building? Those types of things are really important. And if you need to hire a structural engineer, hire a structural engineer. The other thing that we do in buildings that are really about 15 years old or older, maybe 20 years. Yeah, about 20 years older is we do our sewer scope. And especially like, look, if we're buying a 1970 building, we're doing a sewer scope. You want to make sure, there's trees around, whatever. You never know if there's roots or anything involved. And that gets really expensive because you got to dig up the ground and you got to replace all these lines. And so, you know, anytime you dig up the ground to replace a line, you're probably talking 5 grand at the minimum, just to kind of start that project, just do a basic project. So do your sewer scope, make sure the lines are clear. We did a sewer scope on a property that we had under contract, and had a plumber over there take a look at things, and things weren't being ran properly, fixed properly. And the sewer scope showed a bunch of collapsed lines and all that kind of stuff. We did $1 million price reduction because we knew we were going to have to replace all this stuff. And so that wasn't disclosed. We didn't expect it. And it was a big thing. But if this owner would have kept it, he would have had to do the same thing. So because of that, we were able to, get that price reduction, and be able to move forward on the building. A lot of sellers would say no, but you got to be okay with walking away with something like that. Don't take on a project that you didn't plan on unless it really makes sense still to do the deal. So, I think sometimes people get emotionally attached to these buildings. It's easy to. You put a lot of work into it. You put a lot of effort. You probably spent a lot of money on due diligence, on contracts, on stuff like that. Yeah, you've been pounding the pavement for a long time. You're really excited to buy a building, and all of a sudden you find a building, and you find out it's got more problems than what you planned, and you go, well, you know what? I'm just still going to push forward with this. not that you need to kill every deal because there's problems, but you do need to be really thoughtful about should I move forward with this deal or not. It's still a good enough deal to move forward despite the issues that I found. Uh, the due diligence is a almost like it's a depressing thing to do because what you're doing is you're actually looking for problems. So you're trying to find all of the problems. So think about it like it's like you're trying to like figure out what to complain about. Like I'm gonna put a bunch of work to figure out how I can complain. That is a terrible day, right? And so I like due diligence day because I get to discover and I get to find cool things and we always find surprises. But I also don't like it because it always feels like such a bad day. And almost every single time when I'm done with due diligence, I'm like, we can't buy this property. Like this is this is terrible. Oh my gosh, look at all the stuff we find. And then I slow down and I start to look at things and I start to put some numbers to it and the contractors get back to me with their quotes and all that kind of stuff and then it's like okay, breathe again because we did actually budget 2.3 million and yep, everything's coming back and we're going to be able to do this for 2.3 million dollars. So usually though when I'm done with it I'm just like, man, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much is wrong because we dug deep, we looked at every system, we had people there telling us this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, right? um, this is this needs to be replaced this time. I think it's really good to get a PCA report if your lender requires it. No big deal. Most Fannie Freddie agency debts are going to require a property condition assessment, PCA, but your lender might not. And if they don't, I still think it's really good to get one because what the PCA allows you to see is this is a professional third party that's going through your property and so they're going to look at the major mechanical systems and just major things around the property and they're going to give you an assessment on the condition of it currently, how long it's going to last, and how much it's going to take to fix it. And so you actually get to have a document that really builds out a capex budget for you and some of the major things that again oftentimes get ignored, right? Most of the time when you're looking at a property you're looking at the beautiful things, the things that are going to make some major rent bumps, right? You want, hey, I want to replace the kitchen cabinets, I want to do new flooring, new paint, all that kind of stuff. Well, that stuff that's great. It's easy. That's easy to budget. Like I know how much kitchen and bath and all that kind of stuff is going to cost. That's the easy part. The hard part is finding the skeletons in the closet, right? Finding the stuff that's hiding behind the doors, but that's the stuff that's going to burn you quickly when you own a property. And again, I've been caught plenty of times on things like that, and I've got a building background, and I've got a contractor's license. I know what I'm looking at, and it still can burn someone like me. So don't let it burn you. Hire the professionals. There's companies out there that'll do full due diligence for you. But again, make sure they're getting into every unit, make sure they're getting into every little thing. I would show up with them so you can see what they're seeing. I hear so many times that the owners of the company don't even show up to the due diligence. They send somebody that is a third party just to do the report for them and give them a report. I think that's terrible. I think you need to show up and understand the ins and outs of the property because that's what you're going to be dealing with. And you can't communicate with, in my opinion, it's really hard to communicate with the leasing staff, the maintenance staff, um, you know, contractors, all that kind of stuff, if you don't have any clue about the property itself. So you need to know what you're doing. You need to understand the property. You need to understand the ins and outs of it, how really important certain things are, and how maybe not so important other things are that you can just like, hey, yeah, you can truly push that down the road. It doesn't matter. Like, yeah, that gutter over there, you don't need to touch it for another 3 to 6 months unless it falls down, right? Or whatever it might be. So all right, lots in due diligence, and we could dive deeper into every mechanical system, but just again, so if you're not the professional yourself, surround yourself with the professionals and make sure you're doing a really good deep dive, not only into the physical property, but to the operations of the property, the financials of the property. Make sure you're not missing anything. Our due diligence checklist is for the sellers to give things to us. It's like 3 pages long. Yours should be the same length. And if it's not, you're missing things. So make sure you have everything you need in order to look at the property truly under a microscope and decide if you want to move forward or not. All right, that's all I got for today. You have a fantastic rest of the day. Make every day a Saturday.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you being a loyal listener. I would love to have you go on to our Facebook page and subscribe, give us a thumbs up, go on to iTunes or wherever you listen and give us a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe. Your rating and review just helps us push this out to more and more people and continue to grow our audience and hopefully positively affect a ton of people out there that really need this and want this. So the other thing I've got for you is a free ebook on my website. So go on to venturedproperties.com, and download our free ebook on real estate and on syndication. And I've got some data points in there, some really good stuff for you. So I'd love to have you take a look at that. It's free. I'm not expecting anything from it. And also, look, if you want some help in multifamily, want some help learning, growing, getting your business off the ground, I would love to talk to you about what it would look like to work with me potentially and see if that's a good fit. So you can go to coachwithdex.com and check that out, and we can definitely have a call. Thanks a lot for listening. You make it a fantastic rest of the day. I'll catch you on the next episode.